Hi there, in this video we're going to be talking about how community service as a future goal can be a negative thing to talk about in either your application or on your dental school interview. So stay tuned. Hi there, I'm Kevin from International Dentist Central. And IDC is a place where we assist and help candidates, either international or traditional candidates, get into dental school programs either in the US or Canada. So it's our goal, it's our mission, it's our drive to help all candidates have a better chance, fare better in their process. And we do that either through the application process, so assistance with personal statements and application essay questions, CVs, etc., all the way to interviewing and through bench test preparation. So touch all aspects of it. And one of the ways that we help candidates is through videos like these. So one pattern that I want to address that I have been seeing for years now, but I think I've seen even more and more, is this topic of community service as a long-term or even short-term goal. What are the pros and cons to discussing this either, again, on your application, your SOP, your personal statement, or in your interview? Are there any cons to it? And some of you might be a little surprised to see this, the video title. What are you talking about? How could there be anything dangerous or negative about expressing my desire to want to help people who don't have more means, who are in a low-income situation? How would anyone judge that? Or how could that ever look bad on me for me to express that? And in general, you're right. As a society, we usually do recognize, we salute those who take time out of their busy schedules or dedicate their life or parts of their life to helping others in need. I think there's a lot of it's very hard to find someone who'd be truly negative about that, right? We all kind of agree it's the right thing to do. But there are some drawbacks to talking about it too much in your application or in your interview. And I want to discuss what those drawbacks are so that you can make the best decision for yourself as a candidate and maybe have a better way of describing these goals in a way that's a little more strategic than simply what everybody else is doing. So let's just start there, shall we? The truth is, everybody's doing it. So it's like that old, if everyone's doing it, why shouldn't I? Well, actually, there is something to be said for being different, especially when it comes to very competitive processes like the advanced standing program or some very prestigious dental schools. It's nice to be different, right? It's nice to stick out from amongst the average crowd in a positive light, right? So just because everyone's doing that, just because everyone says, oh, you got to talk about community service and talk about how much you love it and how much you plan to do it down the road, that doesn't mean that you should necessarily do that. Sometimes candidates will do that because that's often all they'll really have to talk about. They haven't had research experience under their belt. They haven't, if you're international, like I say, you haven't had too much experience in your home country as a practicing dentist, and you have limited experience here in dental-related jobs or occupations such as dental assistantship or hygienist. So there's ways that people will overcome that and compensate, such as doing a lot of community service, right? And the programs know this. They know the value and they know the purpose of community service and what role that plays for a lot of candidates. They're aware of it. They're privy to it. So it's not going to be too easy to convince them of motives that are completely altruistic, right? Meaning, even if someone says, I'm only doing it to help people, there's usually a sense of skepticism by the programs that, yeah, and this is probably helping you too, helping you with your application, helping improve your CV and your candidacy in general. So, and that's fine, there's no judgment about that. Where I find that people get into trouble, though, is usually when it comes to relatively grandiose statements about the future and community service, trying to suggest sometimes unrealistic scenarios. So let me give you an example. I've had many candidates in a interview session that they do with me, a coaching interview session, tell me that their long-term or short-term goal is to not only start a private practice, not only work as maybe a professor, but also to spend 4 to 8 hours per week practicing dentistry for the underprivileged, right? And this, if that sounds like a crazy schedule to you and it sounds a little unrealistic, me too, but the thing is, the number of times I've heard that from candidates is incredible, right? So it's a very common scenario, it's a very common narrative of their future. And the problem with this, of course, the first problem that we can all see is it doesn't sound realistic, right? Do you know how, those of you who know how much time it takes to run a dental practice, right? The supplies that you constantly need. You have to have competent staff to order those supplies and to bill patients, and you have to be overseeing all this. You have to also be overseeing patient management yourself or overseeing dentists. So either way, whether you're managing dentists and assistants and office staff, or whether you are doing all that plus dentistry, it's a lot of work, right? It's more than a full-time job. So to the notion that you would have your own practice and then spend another day of the week, so that could be 5 days plus another day, so 6 days a week now, doing dentistry, very laborious, month after month, year after year. I mean, is that that's often the suggestion that this is something that they're going to do for the rest of their career. Wow, that's a lot, right? I've spoken to a few professors of dentistry that are currently in the application review process for a lot of dental schools, and the feedback that I've gotten from them is that not only is it not believed a lot of times that candidates can take on what they say they'll be able to do in the future, it's often seen as a hope that this will look really good. Well, if I say that I want to do nothing but help the poor and help the underprivileged, people will just love that, and I'll get all these points in my interview, and I'll get all these points on my application. And the truth is, it just doesn't get looked at that way because there's too many people doing that. And we all see the reality. You show up at most volunteer nonprofit organizations, and what's the first thing they ask for? Do you know anyone else who could help us, right? We need more people to help. We need more volunteers. So clearly there's a huge amount of individuals who say they want to volunteer and say they want to give all this time, but when it comes to the rubber meeting the road, a lot of people just don't do it. They don't show up for this stuff. So there's a huge amount of skepticism when application reviewers or professors who are interviewing you hear this kind of stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to give you that many points for that, maybe none. So be careful with that. Don't bet on that being the thing that's going to win their hearts, right? In fact, maybe it's only going to turn them off a little bit. And often that's the case if you've heard it too many times. Okay, you're the fifth or sixth candidate in the past 3 hours that said that. I'm a little tired of hearing it, right? So we want to be mindful of this stuff, and we want to be aware of the fact that we're not the only ones likely doing these things or saying these things. And the other thing that I want to address is that a lot of professors don't even have the belief, especially in the US these days, that this approach of one individual going down to the community clinic and dedicating their time, yeah, if everyone did that, great, that would probably help a lot. But the problem with that is there's a huge issue with underprivileged populations, especially in the US, not getting their oral health care needs met. And that's not because there aren't enough dentists who are dedicated and willing and motivated enough to get their butts down there on a Saturday morning and give away their free time, right? And their very valuable time. That's not the problem. The problem isn't that there's not enough good people out there to go down there and serve. If that was the answer, then we'd probably have a bigger problem on our hands, because the actual issue is a lot more complicated in most cases. There's a need for healthcare reform, as you might be aware, in the U.S. There's a need for some of these populations to get their needs met in better ways. And maybe it's about different, public policy. Maybe it's about taking the same amount of funds that we have in public policy or in public institutions and redirecting them and making those things more efficient. There's a lot of different ways of looking at this and looking at ways to improve the situation for folks who are in need of dental care. Besides, hey, you, get down there, you're not doing your part, right? That's not usually the philosophical response to here's what we need to do about this problem, and convince more dentists to come, or bring people only into dental school who have that desire. That's usually not the philosophy. So it's not even really resonating with them. They're not in this mindset that we need more people down there at the clinics. They're probably more in the mindset of we need to have more people involved in changing politics and changing health policy and being an advocate for patient populations. All that kind of stuff is probably the language that's happening around the water cooler in offices or in universities, right? So if you think about that, how much more likely will your attempt to win their hearts by suggesting that you're going to spend all your time weekly down at the community clinic? I think they'll appreciate it overall. Most people will appreciate it, but some may not flinch. Some people may be like, okay, well, that's nice. Probably don't believe you, probably not going to happen, so let's move on to the next question. And that's the unfortunate reality. So that's where it can sort of get you in trouble. In some cases, it might even kind of not only not resonate with the listener, but it might actually rub them the wrong way. That's probably less likely to happen. Most people don't have too much one way or another. But again, the question is, could you take your response to a higher level? And perhaps you might talk about some of the public policy issues and what you could do as an advocate and what you could do as a dentist advocating on behalf of changing public policy, getting involved and stuff like that. So there's one option. I'm not saying it's the only option, and there's other ways to help those kind of situations. And another thing that I'd like to bring up is we all seem to be starting from the premise that we need to talk about community service, like everybody has to do that in order to be checking this box as a candidate that you're good enough. I want to question that right now as well. Just because, like I say, all these other candidates that maybe you see them on Facebook groups, maybe you're interacting with, just because they all put that in their personal statement, SOP, or spoke about that in their interview, that doesn't mean that you have to do that in order to pass. That's not like a pass-fail thing. I've known so many candidates that have gone into dental school that we've worked with that didn't mention community service either at all, or in a very minor way they mentioned it. And so it wasn't the biggest part of their future goals. So I would just kind of caution, for you might have something else in your candidacy that is your strength. Maybe you have something related to research. Maybe you have something related to your experience or a specialty that you either have had exposure to or really want to get involved in one day. Maybe that's your thing, right? That we talk about themes sometimes in these videos. And so that may be something that you should focus on versus this need to convince them of community service and how incredible you are going to be and you're going to save the world. Again, if you're the type of candidate that has a track record of that and you have done above and beyond in terms of community service, you're probably somebody who can get away with that and convince the listener that, yeah, you're going to be that candidate that's going to actually do it if given the chance. But for a lot of us, we're just not going to be able to pull that off because it's just talk. We're talking about what we want to do and less about what we've done, right? So when we're talking about our future goals, we want to try to connect that to stuff we've done in the past and bridge that a little bit so it's not just coming out of thin air. We want to be able to build upon our past. And so you want to look at other things too besides community service to think about as a future goal for you and what is it going to look like for you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years and 10 years? That doesn't always have to include a certain number of hours a week at a community service situation. It can, but it doesn't have to. So hopefully that helps and gives you a little bit a broader perspective on this issue and maybe answer some questions for those of you who aren't sure how much to talk about it or whether they need to talk about it at all. Again, hopefully you found this helpful. If you'd like more of this stuff, go to our blog at internationaldentistcentral.com. We post articles, videos, workshops, all that great stuff on there. And please subscribe to this video by clicking on the subscribe button so that you can be notified when we put out new videos that help that should help you with your goal of getting into dental school. Finally, if you have questions for us, if you have some comments, throw them in the comment section below. And again, if you have any questions, let us know. If you go to internationaldentistcentral.com and go to the contact form at the menu at the top, you can always leave us a question and ask that we make a video about it. We'd be happy to do that. Or there's usually a chat box on the bottom and you can just send your message that way. Let us know if we can help you in any way. And again, I'm Kevin, happy to be here with you today. And until next time, I will see you. Have a great week.